Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this stressful situation. Holy shit. So one thing I'm going to tell you, a disclaimer, bugs are expected with XGen. And I was a victim yesterday. I was actually grooming until almost 3 in the morning just to get those eyebrows out. And I had to redo the eyebrows probably 4 times. What was happening is that I don't know exactly what was causing it, but every time I used one of those brushes, probably one of those interactive ones to make it thinner or maybe a little bit shorter, I would try to save my scene, and it would not, you would think that it was saving, and then it would crash straight away. Not saving a file you can recover or anything like that, just straight on, just crash and gone. And then I had to do baby steps. I had to basically go I was okay, let me use this brush here. Let me tweak my guides. Let's save it to see if the guides are causing the problem. No, the guides are fine. Then, okay, let me just tweak a little, add a sculpt layer here and see if that's causing the problem. Not a problem. And as soon as I started doing something more fancy, it would crash, right? So with that in mind, and I'm still getting used to this new machine. I don't know if it's part of the problem, because the other machine, although it was crashing, I never had something like that with something so simple, it was just the eyebrows. So in order to test it, so at least we're not screwed today, at the risk of getting crashes and losing everything I'm doing. So I start grooming the hair as a test. So basically I start doing some grooming. I'm going to show you guys. And then let me just pause this thing here. And then I'm going to show you, and then basically I'm going to save that layer separately and just hide it, and then start a new groom to show you exactly how I approached it. And then as soon as we have something a little bit more advanced that looks a little bit like what I have, then we can switch and then go from there, basically. But so far, I'm being able to save all the files, and it's totally fine. One thing I tried was something that normally cleans up for me is that I exported all the objects, selected everything in my scene, exported, and then re-importing the brand new Maya scene, still crashed after a couple of tweaks in the eyebrows. I don't know exactly what's causing it. So yeah, it might be something in that specific description. But let me just share this to show you guys what I have so far. So far I have this lady there. And then I can show you this little render that I'm just doing interactive. It doesn't look anything like the reference the hair, but it's just trying to get the look of the hair itself, just the color and the thickness, and then obviously the grooming. I have to keep going with it, right? Just to get a little bit of that, because her hair, she has lots of stuff going on there, right? There's a lot of very specific design stuff in there. So I didn't go as white as she has in here. I'm kind of being very slowly just starting to get a little bit more white, but just trying to get the overall look. I mean, obviously I'm gonna need much more clumping, right, to get some of those broad, it's clumps right here. But so just try to do some work in there just to have something in place we can work on. And then so far, like I said, I mean, it's something I'm being able to save. Nothing in the back in there has any grooming yet. The way it works here, if you guys never did it, I'm pretty sure most of you guys have a lot of experience with it. But for some of you guys who never did it, the way it works is like this. You have your guides, and then if you have them too spread out, basically the interpolation is going to look very funky. So imagine something is pointing one direction, the other one's pointing the other direction. Whatever is in between is going to shoot anywhere, right? It's going to go to all kinds of different places in there. So the way I approached this was basically, let's start from scratch here. I have a couple of those layers clump and noise in here. And then I have my guides. So basically that's how we started, right? So we kind of let's start from scratch here just to show you guys, and then later I can just switch back to this description. Hopefully it's not gonna crash on us. So you're just gonna hide it. So, and also gonna hide those guides. So this guy here. So one thing I tried before today, actually, I tried to use my little mask with it has to be pure colors to be able to use those masks, to this area, regions, right? So basically, if you're gonna color it, just make sure you have pure green or pure blue or pure red, something like that. So you actually can create the split in perfectly. But the thing is the way you plug this, I can show you later. But it's under the guide itself. So this guide here, you can plug it right here. You can use like a region map, and then you can plug it right there, right? And then you see like I turned it off completely because it wasn't doing what I was expecting. So for example, if I have, let's turn it on here so you can see, actually the hair itself. Let's turn this one on, turn this one off. And then I have my guides in there, right? I'm gonna turn it off as well. So if I increase this one here under the guide itself, if I increase this one, it should actually split right where I define in there. But as soon as I get like too close to the maximum in there, start getting a little funky, you know? It's like before, obviously this one now has a lot of stuff crossing from one side to another one. It's not fully respecting it. But before I was making sure that everything was like precise, you know? It's like I had like a split right in the middle with that map, and it still was creating this weird spikes in one region. And I had plenty of guides to, you know, to drive those. So sometimes I don't know what happens, but sometimes like some of those guys start getting weird. So what I did instead, I actually turned off my region mask, and I'm using just the guides to drive this. And what I'm trying to do first is to actually go with the hair back all the way, basically like all the hair going back first. And the reason why I'm doing this is because if you start pulling them forward, you know, before you have a good amount of them, if you get, for example, like some of them going forward too much around here and here, sometimes it gets confused. It thinks that interpolation has to happen around the middle in here, and it creates this fan, kind of like almost like a, you know, it's like a fan effect right here. So I'm kind of like carefully just like starting from the back, and then slowly I'm going to start bringing them forward and make sure that they are not creating that weird interpolation when they pass the middle point right here. And then if I need something else, I can actually customize that later. But that's my approach at this point. So let's just turn this one off. Again, this one here. And let's start it. So let's just hide this guy here. So we have a clear screen. So first thing, let's select some faces in here. Again, like it's optional for you guys if you want to do, for example, like use like a different object. For example, like if you want to just copy those faces into a different object and just group that object, there are a couple of advantages. You know, it's like one of them, obviously, if something goes wrong, you can actually fix just that object. Another thing is that you can use, for example, like a single UV map for that one. And in that case, you can actually paint interactively inside of Maya instead of having to rely to, you know, ZBrush and stuff like that. The disadvantage is that you have to constantly check and then basically like make sure that you have the same topology, right? And the same UVs, for example, for this guy, like as a starting point. And then if you change something about the head, you have to figure out how to reproject it, right? So you can actually use the transfer tool to reproject it. Or if the UVs are fairly in the same spot, I mean, like you can always like use by UVs, but in this case, if you're gonna change the UVs, you're gonna have to rely probably like not even the topology, right? Because you need to basically, like if you change too many things, you're gonna have to reproject it. Just make sure it conforms perfectly to the head, right? So I rather like do everything in the same object, because mine is just like I said, they are portraits. I have lots of like free room to actually experiment with that. If something doesn't go right, for example, like if something in the groom, it's completely fucked. I mean, like it doesn't work at all. I can groom stuff manually by just like selecting bundles of hair and then grooming, just like I did with that portrait of my wife, like in July last year. Basically, you know, it's like I got a ballpark of the hair, and then I just like sculpted everything by hand. But in this case here, I'm gonna try to push as far as I can using just guides first, and then whatever is left, then I do some sculpting. So let's just go to topology. Just gonna select middle, so we have symmetry now. And then let's just select, just like I did yesterday, I'm gonna be selecting a bigger area than I would expect. For example, like instead of like having like a very large forehead, she actually does have a little bit of a short forehead. It's not a lot of, you see, like for example, right here, look at that. It's not that long of a forehead, right? It's kind of small. So I'm gonna be bringing pretty much like the line, pretty much like very low. And then anything that I need to, oh, by the way, I'm using autosave. So every 20 minutes, we're gonna have to wait a few seconds, because I'd rather do that than lose everything. Yesterday was a torture. So let's wait a little bit. Okay, there you go. So we're just gonna go much larger area than I would need. And then I can either use like the same hairs that are going to be growing here to make them into like smaller hairs to blend, or I could go potentially like higher and then use the peach fuzz and just grow the peach fuzz and do that job as well. But then I would have to worry about like really coloring the peach fuzz to look more like white hair, right? Because they are not going to be completely, for the white hair is not just a matter of like using the melanin color, because if you just go very low with the melanin, if you go too low, it's going to be super white, right? But in our case, I want it to be a little bit more on the gray side. So to do that, I have to play with like a different slide. I can show you guys as well. So let me just go behind here. And I'm going to grow again. Like this is something I have to adjust. The back of the ears are a little funky in there. But again, I'm going to bring a little bit down because I like to have this area here as a buffer to groom like tiny little hairs, right? So just to have that little peach fuzz, like longer fuzz around there. So I'm gonna go much lower than I would expect, like from the hairline. The hairline would be around here probably, right? So I'm leaving a big chunk of room in there just to groom more stuff. Just like select this whole thing. And then we're gonna double check the front to see if we have enough area in there. Go here, around there, and then here. Could make it bald on the top would be cool. So yeah, around here, maybe I can bring this line, kind of like it's almost like an echo of the orbital here, right? So I'm gonna just like bring it a little bit closer in here. Obviously, this I'm gonna have to erase a lot of them just to create a blend. But then I'd rather have like a bigger area than a smaller one, because otherwise I would not have room to do anything. So basically like that. So let's switch here, just double checking wireframe. Just a little gap right there. There we go. And something like that should work, you know. So let's add some hair here. So description, let's go to create interactive groom. I'm using like a main hair for the name, and then for the approximate count of hairs, I mean, like it's an older person, I could go lower, but the average is about 100,000 follicles in the human head. I'm counting that I'm actually using some of this buffer, right? Like I have more than I would need, so I'm counting that that's going to spread a little bit more. So in fact, like the actual hair in here is going to be less than that. It's probably, I don't know, like maybe like 90, maybe 85 in the areas that actually matter, and everything else is going to be blended. And then for the length, it doesn't matter because you're going to be using guides. But if you want to make sure you can see everything, you can use like 3 here. I'm using 64 for the CV count at this point. And then, so you try on your machine. If it's getting too slow, maybe you can try 32. You can actually rebuild later if you want to. Or you can do like, let's do 32 for now. So I can actually just have a little bit more speed. And then, so let's see, 100. Maybe we're gonna make it a little bit, it seems like she has a lot of hair. It should be a little bit thinner. Maybe, you know, it's like falling. So let me try a little bit lower than that. Maybe like 95, get a little bit less. And then, yeah, let's try that. So now we have this gigantic hair in there, right? Looks cool. Done. Just render. Top row, right? There you go. If you never did hair in your life, that's how you get top row. So let's take a look now what we need in here. So first thing, I'm gonna add the guides, and then there are 2 options I'm gonna give you guys here. So I'm gonna go to guide, and then we're gonna do the same thing we normally do for the rest of the hair. We did a couple of times now, which is just like click the guide itself, and then click create. And it's gonna create a bunch by default, right? It's gonna pick like the best placement in there. So at this point here, if you can deal with this, I would say like go for it, right? You can actually sculpt on them. Basically, like you can just like hide the top in here, keep just those guys visible. Make sure you're using the sculpt layer in here, and make sure that you don't have this one selected. Make sure you always select the one you're about to sculpt. So in this case, the in guide there. So at this point, you could potentially just like do some sculpting here and get stuff done. But the thing is, you are gonna have to deal with a lot of those guides, right? So it's a lot of them. So you could potentially just like, you know, start like grooming things and then getting the way you want it. But in our case here, what we're gonna do, I wanna have absolute control over everything. And I think those are way too much anyway. So I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna go to, again, to my sculpt part here. You have the in guide, and we're gonna use the density tool. In the settings of the density tool, decrease by 100. I'm gonna just flood it, right? So now she's bald. So now I can add my guides manually. Make sure you have this one selected, add it right there. So I'm gonna click, create the first one here. You can actually do in symmetry as well, so it can go like a little bit faster. You know, sometimes I'd rather do yeah, like without the symmetry. So let's start like a little closer to each other like that. They're kind of small. So let's set up the whole thing here to look bigger already from the get-go. Start long, like little antennas in there. So to split those guys, just like select the freeze, just freeze that one and just like bring this one down. So for example, here, I'm gonna try not to go too forward, like I said before, because of, you know, the problem that sometimes happens with interpolation, right? So I'm gonna start with this guy here, for example, going around here, something like that, like, you know, kind of similar to what she has in the reference right there. Then as soon as I have that one, let's start like one thing. Let me try to experiment with this, because this guy here, the grab tool, there is a setting here. It says preserve length, right? So if you turn this one off, you can actually stretch this pretty much a lot. It's gonna destroy the hair because the spans are not gonna be in place. You're gonna have like too little of them. But the thing is, like, you can always rebuild them, right? So if you click the top, you can go to your main hair later. You can just say like rebuild. Let's see if it worked. This one, sorry, this one, rebuild. And now you have like a nice curve again. So that's kind of like a hacky way to do it, because you can actually really stretch stuff like the way you want. Let's do like here. Where's this guy? And you can really stretch it, because otherwise you're gonna have to, you know, just you know, it's like keep growing it, and then basically like use the scale one. But if you use the scale, what happens is that everything kind of goes out of place like that. It's an overall scale, right? Although there is an option here, I think you can use the, let's see if this locked worked. Yeah, it doesn't. It's kind of like the same. But so yeah, so that's the reason I use this one sometimes to actually stretch stuff, because at any time I can just go back to it and just like rebuild it, and then it rebuilds my curve, and then from that point on I can just use the regular, you know, the comb brush, right? So now I have this curve in there. It's going like from here all the way to the back behind the ear, right? So I can actually go freeze it and then unfreeze that one. I can actually grow this one quite a lot from here as well, so like that. And then the thing that's gonna happen, obviously, as soon as we switch back to the to the lady with the hair, this is gonna look like a mess, because we don't have enough of those guys to interpolate, right? So it's gonna look pretty messy. Just like this is kind of like just the beginning. Once you have established like this length, they're gonna try to interpolate later, and then they're gonna look a little bit. The length is gonna come kind of automatically for you, right? As long as you keep stuff like close enough to those ones you're building right now. Just gonna move around there. Use this guy again. Just gonna stretch it, something like that. And then I can just rebuild it. And oops, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yep.
I'm just wondering. I was actually working with XGen today a lot, and found a lot of problems.
Yeah.
I was wondering, when you're adding like new guides like that with the interpolation thing on, what would be the reason that it wouldn't follow it really? Like it would like penetrate the thing a lot. Like it just didn't follow. Like the ones that would like I would add just didn't seem to follow at all.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, normally it tends to create an approximation, right? Like that's the intention. But I know what you mean. Like sometimes it goes like across the head or something like that. But for the most part, it's actually it does a good job. You know, it's like I agree. Like sometimes you get there's some funky stuff But yeah.
The reason is because it's linear interpolation.
Oh.
So it will literally go straight. It's a performance thing.
Any way to avoid that?
Sadly, no. You can write an angry email out to Autodesk, maybe.
So you see, like right now, so this is the small area that's actually affecting it so far, right? So the thing that's going to happen here is that you have to add like a bunch of those manually. That's why like sometimes is maybe it's a little bit easier for some people to actually use the guide suggested when you do the auto click in there. But I kind of like having the control, you know. It's like it just takes a long time because you have to keep adding them. But for example, this one here, if I have interpolation now, it shouldn't be too bad. Let's see. It's going to look weird, like I said, but hopefully not too weird. Let's click it around here. Actually, maybe I can do one at a time. So let's do that one first. And then we can do, let's go to this guy with no symmetry. So let's try a little bit closer here. It's still gonna, I think it's gonna try to interpolate with that one, but let's see what it does. Let's try around here. Yeah, still going to the same side. But let's go back here. Oh, symmetry is on. There you go. Let's bring this guy in here. Then a little bit closer to the head and higher.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Do you ever use like a block out in Maya in ZBrush and then dump it in Maya and then guides on it?
No, actually, but I know it's very effective, and I know that some people, for example, block in Maya itself, and they extract from the polygons, they turn into curves, and then use these curves to transform them into guides. I think you can do that as well. You know, it's like if you feel more comfortable with it.
Cool.
Yeah, I kind of observe what I see in there, and I try to replicate that. And it's just like by using like different masses. So for example, if you have a very specific feature that goes around here, I try to create a bunch of those guides close together, probably like 3 around. And then I come all of them starting separate and then coming to a point, you know, so we kind of like bring everything together. It's kind of like faking a clump, a large clump. And that works fine as well. But yeah, normally it's just like trying to replicate that. But I mean, like to me, it's like it's a direct work to do this way. But if you rather like spend some time just like building the like a little topology to make sure that everything looks perfect, you know, it's like then you definitely can do that.
Chris?
Yes.
Sorry to go on a tangent, but
no
can you, in XGen Interactive Groom, make that the clumping as for point the guide instead of just a random, like in the core?
Oh, you mean like to follow the guide itself?
Yeah, because I have a like long hair and it's really like specific clumps, and I was like, oh, that would be cool if they follow. I thought it will be like I never used too much of the interactive groom, but I've used a lot of XGen, and by default they follow the guide, and we're like, okay, I just have to make my guide as was intended, and I've just been struggling with the result, and I was wondering if there was something to check or something.
The interactive, the only way you can do that is by using those little region masks, you know. You don't have like just like you have with the core, right? With the core, you can actually define the base, like follow the guide and create the clumps based on the guides. The interactive, I don't think you have that. You have to actually define. I think Sven was able to do that in like my first class. One of my colleagues from ILM, he took my class, and then he was able to do in his character. And I believe he used like region masks to do that. The thing that's a little tricky is that with the region mask, because you cannot paint interactively here inside of Maya unless you have just one UV, it would have to be kind of like a hacky version of it. You know, it's like you probably would have to use like a copy of this object with one single UV, so we can actually see what you're painting. And then you would paint just around that. You would paint like a little mask with a single color, like a pure color, around all of those. And then you could actually use those to drive like specific regions, you know, and that would work. But yeah, it would have to be kind of like a hacky way to do it. I don't think, like, to my knowledge, that there's a feature for that specifically in the interactive, you know.
Oh, thanks. Well, like I said yesterday, I manage a way around using be able to paint directly in Maya, so I could just try that. Thanks.
Yeah, sure, man. That should definitely work, you know. Otherwise, I would have to basically like try to export those guides, maybe like as polygons or something, and bring it to ZBrush, and then use those ones as my own guide to paint in there. But I would just like maybe like copy this guy and have just one single UV. That would be more interactive inside of Maya. It kind of sucks, you know, that not even like, for example, like Maya does support UDIMs, right? But then if you go, for example, to try to visualize those, for example, I try to assign like the set of maps that I have, very simple maps, just the blue and red one, into a Lambert shader, and then just turn on the textures in the viewport. It didn't show up. I mean, like, just because they're UDIMs, it refused to show up in the viewport. So it kind of sucks, because like the industry has a lot of necessity, you know, it's like to use this stuff, like, and visualize stuff with multiple UDIMs, and they still, like, seems like it's very limited to that. And it's not like XGen or Arnold's fault. I mean, like, it's Maya. I mean, Maya should be more smart about that. But if I turn on right now, you're gonna see, like, it's slowly you're gonna start like building those forms, and as soon as you have more interpolation, more of them coming together, then you're gonna have like more of those. You're gonna be capturing all those areas, right? For example, like if I do live in here, for example, I click this guy right here. It's going to try to capture that entire area around here. So I'm going to click it. So you see, like, it pulls everything. But you need to have enough interpolation, right? You need to have enough guides to be able to capture all this stuff, right? So right now, like, she has this very long hair in there. And then, so basically what I try to do, if I have like something like, if I have to do a groom like this lady, let's see right there. I would try to capture this as kind of like in layers, you know. So for example, like this would be the top layer, like this very, you know, specific area around here in the front. So what I mean by that is, like, I would try to keep the groom in those regions right here, for example, pretty close to the skull. So I would keep the guides close to the skull, and basically like this whole area underneath, try to imagine like removing this wig from the top here. So for example, like all the way, this part right here that's covering the second layer in there, I would actually keep as a top splines that I would have to manipulate, and everything else would be a little bit deeper, right? So I can actually cover them with those guys. So like around the whole head in here, I would keep those guides pretty much close to the skull, and then so I have room enough to actually come with those guys and cover them up. So at this point here, all this process I'm doing here is exactly what I did to reach that other one. So we're gonna just turn it off, and let's continue with that one so we can experiment with other stuff. So let's turn this one off, this one off. Let's switch back to this guy here, which now has actually some modifiers. Let's just turn it off, the noise and the clump. You see how much the noise, just a single noise adds, right? Like just by looking at it, just like a noise modifier. You know, it really mixes things together, right? Because if you look without the noise, you get those areas of like a flatness, right? So it kind of like looks pretty flat like that, right? And sometimes even like if it's kind of like a interpenetrate like this, just the noise itself helps to smooth this out. Obviously, I'm gonna try to avoid this by adding more interpolation, right? Like what more guides. This is just the beginning here. But with the noise, look at what it does. It actually blends that entire area much better than, you know, having penetration stuff. So it helps to disguise a lot of problems with the hair, right? And like I said before, I mean, like sometimes it looks a little heavy when you look in the viewport, but then when you render, sometimes it's not heavy enough, you know. It's like, it's almost like it could go a little bit heavier than that, kind of like, you know, it's just a little bit. And then the density, obviously, the noise, I could go potentially like with a few different passes, one just to make things a little bit like micro you know, it's like a micro waves, right? And then the other ones would be like some bigger waves, kind of like, you know, it's a little bit more wavy. And then on top of that whole thing, the actual lady has a very messy hair right there, right? And then that means I'm gonna have to add like either a very specific layer to create like all this mess in there. For example, like I can start with a different description, or I can just use like a layer with a mask. And then with the mask, I can actually make sure that just a few of them are affected, and I can actually bring them into a larger scale, you know, and use like other noise modifiers to create that. Sometimes I use one way, or sometimes the other one. Sometimes like if I want to have like absolute control, I just create a new description and I place by hand a bunch of those guys, interpolate some of them, and then, you know, call it done. But sometimes just a noise modifier actually helps too. So I can either, you know, can do either way. So let's switch back to the lady here. Uh-oh. Don't crash on me. All right, there you go. Let's get back to this one. So yeah, this is gonna be kind of like a lot of back and forth. Grooming is never like, because, especially because I'm not like a groomer per se, right? It's never like an easy thing. It's always like takes like a lot of like trial and error. So for example, like this guy is here, I could have gone with this one going flipped over the other side, but I kind of like tried to do kind of like what I saw in the reference, that she has a little bit more going over like that, the middle area. But at some point I'm gonna have to select, for example, just the top layer and make sure that I do what I said before, like bury those guys under, and then just use the front ones to cover them up. But I'm gonna just be adding some more in here. So the procedure is always the same. So basically, like I mask everything I don't need. If I'm not working on the guide, I just skip it mask, like with the freeze. And then from that point, I just go to click the guide and add one manually. So I'm gonna pick like a spot where it doesn't have a lot of interpolation happening. So for example, like around here, let's get that one. So let's get this one. It's pretty short because interpolating with those little guys here, I have a few of them, they're very short. Let's just grow this one. Oops, the opposite. Just like that. And then an easy way as well to define like the length of the hair. Like say you put like one hair down and then you are happy with the length of it. You can actually use this scale tool here, the length tool, and you can define, for example, like a max length and the minimal length the same. For example, let's try like at 50 for both. Let's see how long we can get. So if we have 50 and 50, let's try like that. So if you click, it goes straight to the size that you want. Let's see 30 and 30. So that way, for example, like I could potentially go like over a bunch of them and use this just to scale straight to 30, right? Let's skip like 25, 25, just like pops right there. So that's another little trick. So let's just like do a little grooming here. Come a little back. And at some point, I'm gonna have to start like selecting just the ones close to each other and then try to create like those larger clumps. At this point, it's just like really more concerned about adding more stuff. So the hair is not lost in translation in there. It's not like abandoned, right? Like it has something to interpolate with. So around here, probably gonna need quite a bit actually. So this guy right there, the length looks okay. But it's just like popping out a lot. So I'm gonna bring it down. And I don't even know what I'm gonna do with her hair at the end, you know, it's like because you don't see the back of her hair. I thought about like maybe doing like a kind of long ponytail in the back and then some different stuff on the side so she can actually, I can actually attach those pieces in there. But I'm also not sure if I'm gonna really reproduce what I'm seeing with her and just create something different, because since she's kind of like a little bit of a creature, right? It's mostly a human just with pointy ears at this point. So I removed a lot of those designy things I had, but I might reintroduce that if I feel comfortable, you know, it's like maybe do some experiments with the design after I'm happy with the lady. But for now, I'm just gonna keep her as human as possible. So let's see if I turn on this guy here now, I was actually, you know, starting to actually bring it to a certain form in there. Those guys are still funky because they're interpolating between those short ones and then not enough ones in here actually changing the direction, so they're just crossing over. It's auto-saving, sorry. So slowly you start building, like you have to have enough of them to capture all those areas, you know. That's why when you do the creation, Maya suggests to have like that many is a lot of them. I think it's much more than what you need, but you definitely need like a good chunk to be able to capture every single little area, you know. So let's just hide this guy. Same deal, like freeze it, go to the next one. And then let's see around here, for example, like this area doesn't have a lot. So I'm gonna just add one around here. Oh man, look at what I did. I had this one selected. So I'm gonna have to select the in guide first. Otherwise it's gonna be adding single hairs at the top description, like the main description. So I just added like an actual hair follicle in there instead of a guide. I keep saying like, guys, be careful, don't click anything, you know, make sure you have the edit selected correctly, and I keep doing it. It's that thing, you know, it's like I don't want you guys to suffer, but I'm an idiot, so I'm gonna suffer for you. Do as I say, don't do what I do. All right, so let's try that. Oops. Oh, that's kind of short now, huh? It's kind of long in the back, but here it's kind of short. So let's try, let's maybe like 35 around here. Oops. Pops right there. There you go. That's just a suggestion. Obviously, you can actually just turn that one off. Just going to start actually curving it back in here. Maybe add a few, but I have to make sure I have enough of them, because, for example, if I do this and this area is very broad, I only have one in this entire area here, right? So that means this is going to bring a bunch of hairs towards this point, and it's going to look weird. So if I want something like that, I have to make sure that the other ones around them have support enough to actually go in different directions. So this one actually can stand alone in there with like just a few of them. So that means I'm going to have to really add more in there. So if I just like turn the hair on, it's gonna see like it's gonna be a big chunk of stuff that's gonna be coming from there. So right there, see, like it's not even interpolating that much, it's capturing just a little bit right there, it's starting to change the direction. But it's gonna be interesting. I particularly like the profile when I render her. She looks pretty nice for the profile. Yeah, I think it's gonna be kind of sweet if I can nail this. Obviously, it's always like an if. We always make it work, right? Like at the end, like even if you have to hack this thing, we're gonna make it work. That's the spirit, man. Hackery. Like I said, like XGen, there is no waste. I mean, like you can do something totally different with the guides and still manage to actually do a sculpt layer that you do, like you correct the whole thing. An example is this. Check this out. Let's pretend like we finished our guides, which we didn't, right? They're just the beginning. We have to add a lot of them to get something better. But let's say you manage like to do it, and there's no way you can actually control anything here. Nothing stops you, obviously, if you are working for animation. Probably not the ideal situation, but if you're just doing a portrait, like you know we're doing here, this class about portraits, you can do this. You can just click the top node, add a modifier like a sculpt layer. Click the edit button in there, make sure you have edit, and then you can do this. For example, like I want that specific little point in there, so I can actually go, for example, and freeze, let's say, a small chunk around here, like that, and then unfreeze those guys. Just an example, just gonna add just for you to see what I mean here. I'm gonna just like deselect those guys and just like keep, let's say like this area here, I want a very specific design for that specific little line in there. So I can actually go to my comb brush, and you can just see like show here like a collide with meshes, invert frozen effect, right? So just with this guy here now, I can actually grab that whole area. Some of them, I picked the wrong ones in there. I have to actually analyze from the other angles first before I did this. But just so you see, for example, like if I go all the way around here, I can actually turn this into a tiny little point. Bring it like to break the profile, for example, can bring it out like that. I really design it from different angles, like from here, clump them together at the end. And then once you have the modifiers, like the noise, for example, right? This whole thing kind of blends together. So if you have enough like clump and noise, this whole thing can clump together. So if I have something like that, for example, I can do in multiple different spots, and then I can design the entire thing kind of manually, you know? So let's say like if I add like a noise modifier in here, this one is actually at the top, right? So it would be nice if I actually had this one below the clump and noise. So let's see what happens here. So I have the clump now is actually breaking up a little bit, and then the noise. And it starts like to look a little bit more interesting, you know? So this basically, like I'm gonna show you this. So for this model here, for my wife, that's basically what I did. I still have to break up stuff a little bit more, right? Kind of like try to, you see, but all of those guys here, I got like little chunks, and then I could design exactly the way I wanted, right? But obviously, if you had enough guides, I could potentially be able to drive this with tiny little areas with clumps of guides to create a very similar effect. That would take much longer. But this one is basically like sculpting it, you know, just the way I show you guys, just selecting a bunch of them at a time and then sculpting them. So it's possible to do it, you know, it's like just an option I'm giving you guys. So I'm just gonna remove this because that was just a test. And then let me just to show you guys different approaches, because yeah, there's no waste, you know, it's like you can definitely go to town with what you can do with the hair, you know. So there's something happening around here. It's kind of like the hair is going through it. I'm gonna try to pull this guy out slightly. Let's try here. Where is it? This guy here? Oh, sorry. Click that one and add it. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything. There you go. And let's go here. Uh-oh, what did I do? Oh, I press H, sorry. I was like, what? I was supposed to press B. Okay, so let's just bring this invert. Sorry, this one. Let's bring it out a little bit. And maybe gonna bring it towards this direction here slightly as well. And then if things are getting a little bit messy, you know, it's like, for example, you get like, start crunching stuff like that, right? You can always set like this brush here with the smaller intensity. So this is the smooth brush. You can do local, and then with the, you know, I'm gonna remove the preserve length. Then you can just like click on it. So for example, if I'm just like crunching things, like I said, like by moving stuff too much like that, it looks a little weird. All right, you can actually go with this guy. The intensity is very low, so let's get a little bit stronger. So right there, you just like smooth out the entire curve. Sometimes it happens, you know, as it gets a little crunchy. So it's cool that you can actually just go and smooth it out.
Hey, Chris?
Yes?
I think if you press shift, it also automatically goes to your smooth brush.
Oh, it does?
I think so.
Huh, no, in this case here, it's going to...
Oh, that's weird. Mine actually goes to the smooth.
Huh, interesting. Maybe like it's the shortcuts we have. In my case, it's pretty much like default. I didn't create any shortcuts, but do you think it's like Control Shift? No, Control Shift.
No, it was, yeah, I didn't create anything. I just kind of did it and it worked.
Well, that's good to know. Oh, this is a good candidate to just bring with this guy here and just stretch it pretty good. Like that, and then we can rebuild the entire thing. Let's rebuild 64. I'm actually using 64 for them, right? It doesn't matter because there's just a few, but like 32, it might get a little bit steppy. Yeah, look. So yeah, you have to go with the 64. For Jessica, because she had all those additional stuff going on, I actually did like what I think was like 100 and something, 120, because I needed some very specific little curvatures in there, and it's just not enough to get all the curvatures, you know. So sometimes you have to crank the number of CVs quite a lot. But basically, like the intention here, once I have everything in place, I can just like unfreeze everything like that. And then you can move little masses, you know. For example, like I could get like that whole area. For example, if I need to lift this a little bit. But to do this, I'm gonna have to be at that point, like all the relationships would have to be okay. For example, like the deep ones would have to actually be deeper. For example, if I look from this angle here, I see that some of those guys here could be deeper, so those ones can actually cover them, right? So I would have to actually basically select everything, and then just like with a small pick, I would have to get, for example, let's say this guy here, and then this guy, something like that. Like I try to add them to a deeper layer. Oh, is it selecting? Why is it not selecting? What? Weird. Let's see what I have in my settings here. Global, local. Huh. I wonder if it's a display kind of thing. Yeah, I hope it doesn't. Now you reverse the whole thing. Interesting. It's definitely not picking the ones I want. Oh, now you got it. It might be something related to the fall off here. Screen and then the filter back faces. Sometimes that does it. So let's try it now. Okay, so I think it's working now with the filter back faces off. So let's try this guy. Okay, that worked. Oops. And then this guy here, like I said. And now we can actually just bring them down slightly. But the thing is, like, this is gonna be a lot of repetition. So instead of like doing this, now you guys know what I'm doing here. So we can actually move to something else and maybe do some grooming, some other area. Like we still have like to do little grooming like in the nostrils and stuff. So you can see those ones, like it's simple to do. And then you come back to this one, you know, it's just like, I don't wanna bore you guys with all this stuff. But obviously if you guys don't mind, I don't mind like keep doing this, you know. It's just gonna be like designing and pulling stuff around, you know, it's like adding more of them. So not a lot of exciting stuff going on. Let's double check that. Let's get those ones deselected as well. Oops, not this one. So interesting. Now it's actually not allowing me to deselect those ones because it'll have a sculpt modifier. I wonder if I turn this one on. Let's try that. Let's see if that allows me to actually, yeah, there you go. It has to be a sculpt modifier, otherwise it doesn't allow me to do that. Let's go back to this guy and then clump, noise. So it's starting to look like something. Let's look from this angle. Still very plain, right? Like nothing too interesting going on. This area here have to actually add more guides to be able to get rid of that interpolation weirdness. And but let's do something like this. Let's just try a little render just to see where it stands. Let's try maybe like that profile I like. And since we are rendering, let's just do, let's put the rest of the grooming here. So the main hair, eyebrows, eyelashes, and lower eyelashes, and the hair, okay? So let's try that. I keep like every couple of minutes rendering stuff because I wanna see the look of the hair. So for example, like I'm not just looking at the form itself, but the look of it, like the shaders and everything. So every time I do a render, I think I take like probably like 40 different mental notes about what's wrong with the model. And then I keep like, okay, I have to fix the hair. I have to fix the nose. There's a spot in here that needs to be smooth. There's a wrinkle that's missing here, you know. I access the whole thing like every time I render something. So I can literally like pick it apart, you know, it's like every time. So yeah, let's do a little render so you can actually see what's going on. I like to see like the contrast between the elements that have hair already. For example, like if I'm looking at this hair, I want to make sure that it has it's in the same universe as the rest of the hair. You know, it's like I don't want it to be too thick. I don't want it to be the color to be too off in relation to the rest. And I keep adjusting stuff. So sometimes I go back and forth, like, okay, let me adjust the color of the eyelashes or something, because not talking to the rest at this point, right? So I have to keep doing those renders to access all this stuff. So let's try, maybe like, let's just reduce this to a little spot like that so I can actually see this mask. I'm gonna see specifically this area around here. Let's just make it big, like that. Yeah, in terms of the thickness of the hair so far, I think I have like 0.012, but I might go either like, instead of like going thicker than that, like the overall number, what I normally do is to actually play with the curvature, you know, and then kind of like reduce the thickness right there instead of like using the general number. Let's see around here. In terms of thickness, I think it's not too far, you know, it's like I might have to do some tweaks here and there. And then obviously we have the entire pass we need to do to blend this entire thing. So like those guys gonna definitely go, you know, it's like thinner. I have to do that pass. I'm concerned that that pass added as a sculpt layer was basically what was causing the crashes with the eyebrows. So I have to be very careful of that. I'm gonna have to save it first before I try it. And then I can try to, you know, it's like reduce the width with a brush and see if that helps. And also what I can do here at this point, you saw that I groomed everything against like some polygons, and I don't have like a super high density mesh at this point. So it created a bunch of like stair stepping here, right? So it's like all kind of over the place like that. So what I can do, I can actually in ZBrush again, I can paint a mask just like I did for the eyebrows, a density mask for the hair. So I can actually eliminate some of them from the get-go right here, right? It just leave it like a smoother area. I can actually just like reduce the width for them and create that blending a little bit nicer, you know. But just to fix that little stair stepping here, it's just like a little mask just to smooth things out. Yeah, this whole thing in the back here is gonna be a little bit of a project. Hair itself is always a project, you know. It's like you see some people spending like weeks, if not months. I remember like the groomers, like we had 2 groomers working on Kong, and then both of them spent like months and months. But obviously it's not the same as doing like a single image like this, because they are actually in charge of like recreating like different looks for the fur, like a fur with mud crusted to it, you know, it's like lots of effects mixed with groom. So that's much more complex for sure. But still, you know, it's like if you need like a grooming, people with a lot of experience, they still take like weeks to deliver something like that looks exactly what you want to see, you know. So it's definitely not like by hacking a few curves in there we're gonna get the results. It's gonna take me like days, if not a few weeks, you know, it's like to get the look perfect or close to what I want. And then, but at least like the approaches in there, you know, it's like it's just now a matter of like me sitting my butt and doing it, more and more of the same. That's when we need like a monkey, right? Like a monkey you can actually pay in bananas and the monkey just do the job for you. Because it's like I like having fun with you know, with the creative part of things, but then when you get to the technical stuff, I mean, like I just do because I have to to achieve the result, but I don't have fun doing it, man. It's like I just want to do some more sculpture, you know. But obviously, like over time, my feeling about the hair evolved, because now I consider more of it's another sculpture, you know. I just have to sculpt it, and then that's how I face it nowadays. So it's part of the sculpture, instead of like a burden at this point, but still not my favorite thing to do. But I like to see it, like when they come together, for example, like you get like little fuzzies in there, little eyelashes, and then it's like it starts adding more life to the character, it's like, so that's the part I like seeing, it's like I know that the hair is a mess, but I can see the potential of, it's like after this is blended nicely, it's like how this can actually start to look nice. Let's talk about the shader I'm using for the hair, because at this point here, like I said before, you see like there's a tiny bit of yellow, right? Because I want a little bit of that, but for the most part it's white and gray. So the way I'm approaching this, you see like I didn't add any like salt and pepper. It's basically like, it's just like white hair. And so there's a couple of things I did here. Let's just move this one out of the way. But before I click it, I think you're gonna just stop this render. It's a little bit more, just give you a little bit more time. So it actually can use this one later to evaluate things. Actually, at this point here, I think I can use it the way it is. Let's just stop it. Just let's store this one. So let's talk about this shader here. So let's go to the main hair, this guy here. Yeah, that's the one. And then let's go to my shader right here. Oh, I have a Lambert assigned to it. Look, this is the one that I did before. I don't know why it's assigned in there though. Oh, it's actually because it's connected. The same maps are connected. So I'm just gonna click selecting here. I'm just gonna delete it. So let's get back to this guy. And then even my Lambert in there is funky. So the main hair here is basically like is a AI standard hair, like the Arnold one, right? And then by default, the base is all the way to 100. So if I click this one all the way to 100, it's gonna go like 100 is basically white. So it's gonna be like that, right? So we have like at this point here, what's controlling the color is just the melanin, right? And the melanin is basically like black all the way and then white all the way down, right? In between, you're gonna get the brown color. And then you can add redness by clicking this slide here, right? Melanin redness. So basically like you go from blonde or white to blonde to dark brown, light brown, dark brown, and then black, right? But in our case here, what I try to do instead of like going full white because it looks quite fake when you render just with this slide right here, I actually added a little bit of melanin, something like this, slightly, blonde, very little. And instead of like keeping my base all the way to white in there, I actually tried to keep it, bring it back. So I brought it back to, I believe I used like 240 or something like that for this one. And then although it looks dark in there, when you render, it should give you the results. So let's look around here. That's why it's important to actually have this render going on at all times so you can actually see what's going on, because you cannot trust the viewport, especially like considering the Arnold is not completely well integrated with Maya just yet. Certain things just don't work. So I'm just gonna move this up right there. Even this thing here is a little funky sometimes. I have my window here. Mouse center shape picking. I think that's the one. Is that the one? No, I think it's the interactive. Where is it? Enable, render. There's one of them that actually stops that. I thought it was a 3D manipulation, but apparently it's not. Anyway, let's just move this manually like that. And then let's just do a little render here again. So you see like it's kind of dark brown in there, but if you render it, it's a combination of the low melanin plus the map going more towards black in there. So let's play with those so you can see in real time or close to real time. So there's the hair. So if I go with my base here all the way up like that, it's gonna get more blonde, right? It's gonna get more yellow to it. And it's gonna lose a little bit of it's gonna get very translucent basically, right? Like the melanin super low at this point. So if you bring this one down, you started introducing a little bit more of like this kind of like dry look, and it's slightly more gray as well, right? And then at this point here, if you go all the way down, you should get like black hair again. So basically you're countering what the melanin is doing there. But it's just like, it's a different effect, you know? It doesn't look the same. For example, like this look here, let's try this. Let's store this one. So I have like very low melanin. Let's keep like at 0, maybe like here. Something like that. That's like, it's one look. All right, let's save this one again. Now look at this one. I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna bring both all the way up after my autosave finishes. Let's try. Stop it. That's what it does when it's about to crash. I wouldn't be surprised. There you go. Didn't crash. Yay. So I'm going to bring this up all the way. So it turned white. And now the melanin all the way. Black, right? So now look at the look of this in comparison to this. Right? And this one has the, you know, I have this melanin randomized. That's all the way to the maximum here. So if I remove it, then you get something like this. Which is kind of, yeah, it kind of looks the same. I thought the look would be much different, but it looks the same. It's kind of interesting that going all the way down and going all the way, you know, up is the same. But this guy here, let's see, bringing it down, it's not going to do anything because the melanin is cranked all the way. But definitely this one working in collaboration with this one, it does a much better job. For example, if I want to go something that's kind of like similar in terms of values in there, I would have to go kind of like halfway around here. And that would definitely colorize it. It would add like some blonde to it, right? But then if I bring the base down, that starts kind of mixing a little bit more towards like a gray. So I'm gonna keep my 240 in there, and then here 0.070 like I had. And this point here, you get a little bit more of the result that I was looking for. Obviously, I had the melanin randomizer cranked a lot. That should help a little bit with the look as well. It's just like a combination of those. And then there's another slide down here, which is this tint. And then there's the tint. Actually, the tint is for the specular, but you have the diffuse. So diffuse is, for example, like if you really want to kill the natural coloring of the hair, and you want to introduce something weird, for example, like a hair that was like dyed, right? Like dye your hair like blue, for example. So if you introduce something like that, you can actually, you know, introduce like some fake coloring like that. But it's not like, it's not gonna do like this nice little, you know, look of hair actually. It's gonna actually, you know, paint things. So it's not gonna look very natural. So you can use that like to create some, you know, artificial kind of, you know, coloring stuff. You can mix a little bit of that, you know, we can actually use a map. You can plug a map. You can have like multiple colors assigned to it. So that's a different one in there. And then you have your opacity, which you're not going to use. Index of refraction is all for the specular, right? So if sometimes you want a shinier hair, so you can actually go down in here. So you can get a little bit more this kind of like a silky look. It's going to go much shinier. But around like 200 is basically like the default, which is the, you know, what's suggested for something a little bit more natural. Sometimes I play with this, you know. I use sometimes between like 150, for example, instead of like 200. But yeah, totally optional. That's basically it for this, you know, for the shader itself. Very, very simple stuff. I mean, like just those two slides. And then obviously, if you want to plug like noise modifiers in here, you feel free to do that, you know. You saw, for example, like if I crank the melanin here by a lot, then it's going to start picking up a lot of the randomization in there, right? So you're going to get like a lot of those whites in there, which is really cool. You can get like salt and pepper stuff straight away. But then if you reduce the melanin in here, then you're not going to have a lot of that variation, right? So it's going to be like between blonde and then white instead of like between black and white in here. And in that case, I mean, like you have to do a couple of like little cheats here and there. Instead of like using the melanin randomize, perhaps you're going to be able to use, let's see, 70. Perhaps you're going to be able to use like a noise for this mapping here. right? To go between those two colors and maybe use that, the same map as a kind of like a more desaturated version of it, plugged in the melanin as well. So we can actually match them. And I think you can get like a similar result for the white hair. So for example, like I want a white hair just with a little bit of black in it. So let's try to do that here. It's the kind of stuff like sometimes it's like I don't get it straight away. So we're gonna have to poke around a little bit, but let's just try. So for example, like if I wanted to play just with the base for now, let's click noise. This is all Maya, by the way, like Maya stuff. So let's go back down here. I normally switch from below straight to Perlin noise. All right, so let's bring this one up here. And let's just crank this frequency here. Let's do like maybe like 300 or 400. Let's try 400. So very, very tiny like that. And then the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna switch the color. And the effects are gonna go to invert. And I'm gonna make sure that the color balance here, I'm gonna have to find out which one is doing it what now. So let's say if I go down, I'm gonna go towards black, right? If I go up more towards white, okay. So what about the color offset? That goes, yeah, it goes towards black again. So let's see, maybe we can use like a negative offset. Let's try -2. That's too much. So let's try -0.05. Still pretty high, huh? I guess anything negative here is gonna do, no, a little bit of negative it accepts. So I'm starting to introduce a little bit of black hair in here. Let's see. See one in there, right? There's one in there, a few of them. Let's make this area a little bit smaller maybe so you can see it. Yeah, I can see those guys. Yeah, starting to render some blacks right there in here. So, it's like poking around those values. Sometimes you can find a sweet spot where you can actually capture some of those very tiny blacks. It's like sometimes you have to actually crank the alpha gain a little bit. Sometimes you reduce it. Let's see, it's at 373 is pretty acceptable the way it is. Let's try if I crank this one, I'm gonna get a little bit more white hair. Let's see if the blacks are still preserved in there. Yeah, I still see some of them. That should be interesting. And then the overall color, I mean, like I would have to go maybe a little bit lower to get a little bit darker towards that value that I had before. Let's try 0.5. And then for the melanin, let's see what we have for the melanin. Melanin is at 0.70. Let's crank this one. Let's see what it does. Yeah, it's gonna be too much. So let's go and use the randomizer on top of everything. And then we're gonna get some more variation, like there's a little bit more yellows introduced in there, very slightly. And a little blacks in there as well. Yeah, so basically like that noise, it's gonna be very delicate, it's like to find the balance, like what's the ratio of black hair you want. And then another thing to do is basically like if I'm rendering something from the profile like that, and this is kind of like an area that has a lot of shade, right? Like this is a side of the face that has a lot of shade in there. So make sure that you're rendering from the other side as well, because sometimes it's very deceiving. Sometimes you think it looks in a certain color and then you see like under the actual light and then it changes a lot. So let's just switch a little bit. Let's go pause this one. Let's just go window, story snapshot. See another thing that Maya with Arnold does, right? Like the color never matches what you actually render in the viewport. So very important to actually play with it. So, but in terms of the difference here between what we had before was this, right? Like pure white. Now we got a little bit more grays in there introduced, right? It kind of looks more complex, which is kind of cool. So, noise is your friend, it's like for anything. It always adds a little bit of extra layer of goodness So don't be afraid of using it. It's just like a matter of like finding those values that work perfectly, you know. That takes time. That's the part that takes more time. So let's try it from this side here, or maybe like even from here. Let's see what happens right there. This is like most of my time is spent doing this, you know. It's like spinning around the model and then rendering stuff and checking, seeing if it's working, if it's not working, redoing it, and then back to sculpting after. This is kind of like I keep saying like things have to look stable, you know. It's like at this point here, everything is very unstable, like when it comes to the hair, because I just started it, so I cannot trust anything. So I'm just gonna be evaluating it, and then as soon as things are more stable, then I'm gonna go back to actually render adjusting the hair itself, the groom, and then seeing everything in context, and then going back to the model itself, sculpting this entire area, because the forehead needs all the detail. All I have is just like those bigger forms, and then you know, it's like back and forth, just analyzing things. Let's look at this guy here. Kind of like the way that now she has some, you know, some blacks in here. I think this is gonna add a little extra touch. Yeah, it's gonna look nice, I think. But it definitely has to resolve here. Let's wait a little bit.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I have one small question. If I need to do 60% white, 40% black, how do I do it?
Well,
is there any? Yeah.
If you're doing what, like a
60% white, suppose, and 40% black in between. So you make one clamp hair, and there few white hairs.
Yeah.
So something like that can we do?
Yeah, I mean, like if you want absolute precision of like control of everything, for example, like if you want like let's say like some people have like just with one strand of like white hair in a very specific spot, right? You can do that with maps. You can do, for example, like just paint a map. You can do like in ZBrush, for example, bring a color map in here. You can even do like this, what I'm doing right now with the salt and pepper in here. I'm doing with the noise, but you can potentially paint like the noise in ZBrush. You know, it's like just paint like very, you know, noisy surface. And then in a very specific area, go more towards white. Another area, go more towards black. And you can definitely use that. As soon as you plug this map in one of those channels, for example, like either the melanin or melanin plus the first channel in there, those mix together, and then you get like exactly what you're asking.
Okay. I will try. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So yeah, like the interesting thing is that I always look at when I look at the white hair when I was rendering Dick Smith, you know, is that like right around the ears, you normally get like this kind of like darker hair in there. And I always thought like that was part of like, okay, the hair didn't go full white in that region, because that's what happened to me. You know, it's like you get like black hair from the back all the way to the sides, still black, and then white starts growing from the top. But then it turns out that it's just like the way he shades, you know. It's like if it's absolutely white hair, the way he shades, like with the you know, it's like with the shadows and everything, he ends up like looking whiter than it is in those areas, darker than it is in those areas, and those like close to the ears. But when you render, you can see that like everything is like basically white hair with a few blacks in there. But you see like how he's shading the entire thing there to look darker. And basically I was looking at those guys. Let's see. Dick Smith right here. Reference. So his hair, if you look like that, right? Like it's basically like white hair, but then you look here, it looks like it's black, you know, and it's actually not. It's just like shading, like there's shadows in there, and then everything like you know, starts shadows on top of shadows in there, and all of a sudden you get like this dark areas, you know. But then at some time, let's see this one here. Let's see this one here. The hair was not full white just yet, right? So you still can see some of them in there, and then maybe a little bit of the brown still like peeking through in there, right? But then later on, it's just like full white. And then when you look at something like this, which is basically like the sculpture from Kazuhiro, I think they actually did like add a little bit of coloring to look a little bit more you know, black around those areas, especially from this one here, you can see. But this is like a practical model, right? So they definitely added some coloring there. So they went like white around here, and then they kept, but I mean, like he's represented a little bit younger here than he was, for example, in a picture like that, right? Like he's very much like older in here. But you can see, like, for example, right there, it's not because it's like black hair in there, it's the way it's shading, you know, it's like it's probably like as white as this area here, especially in the top right there. So yeah, it's tricky, you know. That's why when you're doing like renders like this, it's very deceiving. Sometimes you think you're rendering like full white hair, you know, it's like, and then you still get this areas to shade that way. Let's just do another one here from this angle. So yeah, I like the way that like some of the black hair is still, you know, it's like peeking through it and then catching some of the very slight melanin that we put in there, like 0.070, I think. Just catch a little bit of this yellow tone, but without going full white, right? So let's just save this one. And then cancel that one. And let's just do like the last one we're gonna do is just like a little bit more broad from the front, like that. Never mind like the sides, the mullet, right? There's a huge mullet now. But she's not gonna be the mullet lady. Nothing against mullets. Mullets are awesome. But she is gonna be a lady with no mullet. All right, let's try this. Just like I said, look how dark it's going underneath there. And you saw me doing all of this to look like white hair, right? So like it's white hair, but it's shading in there. And then it's going dark. Let's try from here down. I have to keep doing this constantly because, you know, it's like just to compare, for example, the skin tones to the hair and see how they're blending together, you know. Obviously, I'm not, you know, using that area of blending just yet, but just to see if things are kind of like living the same universe, you know. It's like, let's say you have like a nice shader for the skin and everything, and then the hair still looks like really fake, you know. It's like maybe it's missing some reflection. Again, I can actually tweak the for the reflection. If I need some more of that, you can always use I hate the tiny screen, man. I like my 4K on the side for sure. So for example, like the specular right here, right? Like I have 0.2, but then for the index of refraction, I can actually increase this to actually add more reflection to the entire thing. So let's say if I put like 1.8 here, now you're gonna start seeing more reflection overall, and maybe you're gonna reduce this, the roughness, to 150, like I said before. Let's get things a little bit more shiny and more silky overall. So if you look around this area here, you're gonna start seeing more reflection now, a little bit more specular. It's like a back and forth, man. Like each character needs a different set of things, you know? So that's why, although I have my skin shaders, I mean, like I rarely kind of like reuse them. Other than this time here, I mean, like I re-imported this one back to my African guy, and he actually worked well. You know, I know I can actually use it for both. So, but you know, normally I just move forward. I kind of keep like experimenting with different settings and trying to improve the shaders as I go. But for example, like a hair like this, if you look at the pictures, it's different from the white hair that he had, for example. It's a different ethnicity, right? The thickness is different. There's a lot going on. So it's always a matter of like, you know, it's like constantly tweaking those little slides in there and trying to get the look you want. But yeah, I think like for now, I think I'm gonna just save those images. And so after the class, I can keep poking around and doing more of that. And let's just do some of the nose hair stuff. The nose hair stuff is an interesting one because it's you know, it's like, I don't know if it's just my impression, but like with older people, they get some, you know, some nastier stuff in there as usual. But overall, like for a younger person, you don't need to do a lot of grooming, you know. It's just like just a few modifiers, you can get the look of them. So let's just like save this one the way it is. right there.
Hey, Chris, can I ask one question before?
Yes, please. Yeah.
How are you gonna get the? You mentioned earlier the like maximum length and the minimum length, but how are you gonna get the hair to like be the same length at like the bottom of the actual hair, because it comes off the head at different?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, well, you can always do like if you want to do like a haircut, you can actually simulate a haircut within Maya. So basically, like if you want to make sure you have that, either you do like with the tweaking the guides manually, right? Or you can actually just cut them and trim. So for example, like if I have something like, let me just make sure I save my scene before I fucked it up. So let's try save as, and then they're starting to get big. Look, as soon as you start putting more hair, start getting like longer times to save. And now I have like this description plus the other test that we did. Next time I'm gonna remove that one. So let's see. Actually, the whole thing about like cutting the hair, that's what I did for the, you know, for those guys' beards, for example. I would set like a minimal minimal length, and I would just like cut them, because with the cut you can actually get like the look of the cut, you know, it's like it gets square at the tips and everything. So for example, in this case here, I can do the cut in two different ways. I can either cut the hair itself or cut the guides, right? So if I want to cut the hair, basically you're going to create a modifier for your main hair, right? So you're going to add like a, let's say like a sculpt brush. And then with this guy on, there's this brush here, that's the cut tool. The way this one works is like this, basically like it shows you that. So you can go with your, these like trim perfectly like that. Obviously, like you're gonna need some modifiers, right? To actually make sure you have like a length that adds some variation back. But you can do that, for example, as a layer to trim things, or you can do it in your guide. So I'm gonna turn this one off. So it should be back to normal now. So let's go to the guides themselves. So I have my guides in there. Let's just hide this guy. And then let's make sure I have this edit on. And sure everything is visible. And then we can go again. Let's try with this guy here. Same thing, like just go and trim them. One of them was left behind. Maybe it's part of the tooling here. Let's see. If back faces is on, sometimes it gets a little funky. Yeah, now it's working.
I think you just answered my question, because I was having that issue earlier and I was wondering why it wasn't cutting all of it.
Oh, yeah, probably, yeah. It's always like, there's like some settings here, man. Like some of those tools have the curve, right? Like that, for example, you go by volume or by screen. And if you're doing by volume, sometimes you cannot catch everything because it's trying to capture that volume, right? And then you switch to a screen and you think like sometimes you're grooming the one side of the head and it's actually going through it because it's actually considering the screen, and then you're grooming the other side. So that's why I think it's very important to keep like masking stuff to make sure you're sculpting just at those specific areas. Otherwise it goes through it and you don't even know what's going on, you know? So yeah, it's meant to help, you know, it's like those filter stuff, but sometimes it's just like, it's worse.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then make sure that after you cut them like that, make sure you rebuild them, you know, because sometimes it gets funky. So go to your base and then just do like a rebuild. Just make sure like the distribution of the CVs are going to be back to normal, you know. So yeah, let's do that. Save this guy here. And then let's look at the, so I'm going to show you also what the eyebrows look like. This was basically like what I had before I start tweaking stuff. And then I tweaked to look very nice and very similar to what I had in the pictures, but then it crashed. And then I did it again. And then it crashed. And I did it again and it crashed. So I left the way it was before. So for example, those guys should be much thinner. Those guys should go down a little bit. They should have a little bit more of a blend going on in there. But I just left it like alone because I don't want to deal with it, you know. Maybe later I'm gonna try to rebuild from scratch the eyebrows, but for at this point here, she's actually, it's rendering, you know, it's like it's looking okay. But definitely something I'm gonna have to revisit at some point. Let's turn everything off here. Let's get the vellus hair, eyelashes.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're feeling like in digital, you're feeling like traditional. So it's not good. You erase it and redoing it.
Oh, pretty much. Yeah.
Crashing.
Yes. Sometimes that's what I do. You know, it's like instead of like fighting something that's constantly breaking, right? Like it's just like, okay, let just big boy here, just like erase it and then do it again. You know, like I said yesterday, I mean, like I did 4 times, man, and I was just like, and I still had to go back to the one that was actually working. You know, it's just like, okay, move on, start something else. But I definitely wanted to do this grooming today before I started the class because I was afraid, okay, what if I start grooming and then none of my sins are saving from that point on? That would be very frustrating for you guys, you know. So that's why I decided to actually start some grooming during the day today. So let's try. Now for the nose hair, we're gonna be doing a similar approach. Gonna be kind of the same stuff. So basically, like, make sure you don't have anything selected, which is not true. We have the hair selected, so deselect that. And then just with a little brush, we're gonna basically, oh, what I can do, actually, I can use the UVs to help me with that. Let's see, select those guys. Let's do that trick, right? Like click UV shell. There you go. And then Control F11 to convert to faces. That was easier than I expected. And then here we can actually keep this area pretty linear in there. I could potentially, you know, eliminate, but I mean, like I have those little trim machines for my nose because I'm an old man, right? So old men have to buy those like weird stuff just like to groom weird parts of your body with hair growing. And so I have a lot of hair that grows right in this little spot right there. So I'm gonna keep this one on. And then if I have to eliminate some of them, I can do it later. But you know, it's like at this point here, to groom like just the nose hair is going to be fairly simple. Before we start, let's look at like a reference. Let's see, nose hair. Oh, that's exactly the machine I was talking about right there. Holy smokes, that's the machine. That's the machine that I have at home. Let's see, this one right there. Look. There you go. It's pretty amazing.
I'm a proud owner of one as well.
Oh yeah, the ladies dig it, right? No.
Oh, they love it.
They love it. But look at this thing, man. That's like the nose in the hair, the hair in the nose. So look at that one. It kind of like it's an easy groom because they grow from the sides, right? It's not like they're growing like all the way from the back. Although I still use them so I can actually cover anything that's not, you know, look at this one, man. Jesus Christ. Right? Dang it. Or this one here. I think we should all go for this type of stuff. But yeah, I think like in terms of like a nice reference would be this one here. Let's see, Shutterstock. Let's see if that's yeah, that's a kind of like a nice one right there. Because you can actually see the type of hair. It's plenty of them, and they are fairly straight, right? Like sometimes they tend to add like too much noise to them. But I think what strikes me the most in here is basically like looking at how the variations in the thickness, right? Like you get like super thin ones, and you get some super thick ones right there in the middle. So let's try to create something similar to that. And like I said before, I mean, like I could, for example, like deselect the polygons in the back of the hole in there, but I'm gonna keep it because it helps to hide stuff, and you're never gonna see it's like just like a void in there anyway. But you know, normally like those guys, you can tell they grow around this ring in here, not so much down there. But let's try to create something here. So let's do a create interactive groom nose hair, and then now for the amount, God knows, right? God knows how many we need in there. If you consider like each eyebrow had like up to, what was that, like up to 1,000, right? So I don't know. Let's see. That looks like a lot actually, because it's coming from all directions. Let's try like maybe like 2,000 for both. No, actually 3,000 for both. Let's try that and see what happens. Oh, that's gonna be like 5. That's pretty close. 550. That's pretty good. And then the length, I mean, like we can do straight away here without any using any guides. I think that would be the best, actually, to tell the truth. So let's try to nail the length. And even if I don't nail it straight away, I can actually use that trick of the minimum and maximum length and just like kind of like reduce the overall look. And then the CV count, I'm gonna keep at 32 because I want some nice curvature. But actually maybe like 16 would be fine, but let's do this. Yeah, let's try that. Oh, that's pretty long. Slightly long. I think it's final. Top row again, man. All right, so top row, let's go sculpt. Edit. And then
she really needs your machine.
yeah, right? And then, oh man, that's like it's like a mustache. It's like a nose mustache. It's like a Super Mario. So let's go to maybe like 0.5, 0.5 here. Let's see what happens. That looks a little bit better. Still a little long, right? Maybe like what, like 0.4? No, 0.450. Oh man, I have to go lower. 0.350? Is it too low? Okay. Something like that. And we still can play with the scale overall, so we don't need to worry too much about this right now. It's funny because like this whole thing, screen, but then filter back faces again, right? Messing up the whole thing. But I think they are all like in the same length now. Okay, so now it's almost like, okay, we have to do a lot of work to make this work. And actually, you know, it's like just a few modifiers normally do the job. Obviously, you can keep tweaking it to get like better results. But let's start with the basics here. So let's go to the attribute editor, and then let's go to the main shape. Let's reduce. So the scale we're gonna have to tweak it, right? Like, and add some variation. And in this case here, I don't need like special controls or anything, so I can actually just add a noise modifier in there and get it done. But let's tweak our curve first. So let's get this one right here. So the tip's gonna be very thin. And then let's get this guy, spline. Gonna get like the root is slightly thinner, and then gonna go larger. Like that. And then, okay, so it's still pretty thick. So let's just go lower here. So 0.08, something like that. The overall scale, there is a scale in here. You can actually play with it. So let's try something like that. Still a little funky. And the amount is a little bit too much as well, apparently, right? It's a little too much. So like the mask in here, if you go to the base, like you can just reduce, you know, a little bit of the density. Let's try with the multiplier. Oops. Oop. Oh, the density multiplier is gonna create some trouble, huh? Oh man, he broke it. Holy smokes. No, don't break it. Let's try to fix it by doing something stupid. Let's try. Man, you see, like that's one of the wonders, huh? Let's try to do a rebuild. Yeah, it didn't work, see? That sucks, man. Nose hair. Freaking hell, look at that. It totally broke it. Oh, man. Whatever I did, don't do it, guys. Don't do it. Yeah, weird. And the thing is, like, God knows what's happening now, right? It gets to this, look. It gets to this weird mode that you don't know if it's just like a screen thing, right? Or if it's actual, you know, problem with the hair itself. So let's try. I'm gonna try to actually do this. You know, it's like use this scaling here again to try to recover it. But I think this is kind of done. You know, I don't think we're gonna be able to recover from this point on. Let's go minimum length. So this one, see, like those ones now are kind of flipped. Yeah, it totally screwed up. Oh man, that's the wonders. Let's go back to face. And we already have everything set here. So let's go to interactive grooms. Let's make this one already in a smaller size, 300, 0.08 in here. That looks closer. We did that faster this time. Now, before I start grooming, I'm gonna do the tweak of the density, or maybe I can do before just to prevent it. Let's try that. Okay, let's go back. Let's, yeah, I wanna prevent any problems. So let's just reduce this straight away. So let's do, I was about to do maybe like 30% less. Let's try like with maybe like 400 here. So like 2000 like that. And then length, blah, 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 okay. So that's closer to what we need. And then just because I was saying like, yeah, this is easy, right? Don't need to worry about it. Those hair. I jinxed myself, man. Let's get this one. And then let's do that little tweak around here again and hope for the best. Spline down, tip's gonna go small. And then I can even add some tapering here. It's interesting, that's actually not shrinking as much as I would like. So maybe like the density would have to be a little bit, yeah, not bad. So you see, like at this point here, I'm gonna just add like a little noise modifier. Same thing, I'm gonna go back to the billow, switch to purling noise, go back here and do like a frequency higher. So like, let's try 200 this time, something like that. And then keep everything default, alpha's luminous, and then let's play with those values right here. Get some variation. So I get some thicker ones in there, some are a little bit smaller. So let's try like the maximum would be like 0.010. The minimum could be a little bit thicker than that, so 0.02. Oh, this one is gonna have to go down, 0.8. And there's still a little spike in their profile in there. So that one, I can actually go back to here, this curve, and just tweak their profile. So let's just make sure that that middle section looks a little bit, actually shrink the whole thing. Yeah, something like that. And now the magic trick is just the noise modifier. The noise does a lot of work for us. And then you can actually groom, but still there's a lot of them in there, man. And now I'm afraid to actually just like tweak that thing and then crash the whole thing. You know, it's like just like tweaking the, yeah, I'm afraid now, man. Let's see, did they do anything with the edit so far? No. Let's turn off the sculpt. And I'm gonna try it again. We're gonna save this time. I swear, man, there are certain things I don't know exactly what's going on because I changed the machine, right? It's a brand new machine. And then also this is a brand new Maya. So it's Maya 2020. So I don't know what's causing the bugs, to tell you the truth. It can be a combination of both, you know, or it can be just one side and then, you know, certain things like this, I don't remember having problems before, and it's, some stuff is kind of new to me. So I'm not sure exactly what's happening. So density mask, I was saying before, let's bring it down. This one was working fine when I tried before. So that's a better density, I think. And now the magic sauce is just like a noise in here. So let's do a noise. It's a lot of hair, right? We're gonna have to eliminate some of that stuff, but it's a lot of hair. It is going from all directions too. Let's go to scale. Bring them out a little bit like that. And then our noise, let's just make sure the frequency is not too high, the magnitude not too high. So just slightly, if I do too high here, it gets a little bit too, you know, crusty. So let's do more like that. And then around here is way too much. So at this point here, I'm gonna have to do something crazy. Ideally, I would have to use like a mask, and the mask that I'm gonna use for the hair itself, like to mask like the intensity of the hair, I could potentially use the same mask for this and just like paint a little bit less here, just like keep like white in the holes themselves, and just a little bit more black in here, like maybe gray, just to reduce some of the density, right? And use the exact same maps that I'm using for there. But because I'm living dangerously today, I think you're gonna try something that you shouldn't try. Just gonna save it again. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to test if the software is gonna screw us up or not. I'm pretty sure you will, but not 100% sure. Because for certain things I was doing before, it was actually, it worked, you know, but let's see if this is gonna be one of those things. So to make sure, I'm gonna create like a brand new sculpt layer. So let's try that with a brand new one. Sculpt right there. And then let's try something here that we shouldn't try. Making sure she's not rendering the background. I felt it was a little slow in there. So this, guys, don't try this. See, this is the density tool. This one fucks up everything. It's like the Midas touch, but just the opposite. Everything you touch with it, it turns into shit. So let's go to symmetry on, and then the value. Oh man, that's gonna be, okay. I'm gonna start with the small value, 10. And the fall off in here, it's all good. Just surface, right? Let's try, ooh, there's no option, it's just surface to make things even harder. So let's try this, let's see what happens. So density brush going decrease, right? Let's see, density mask, interpolate, current description tool, decrease by 10. Oh, God knows what's gonna happen. So at this point here, it's doing it, but you never know. You never know if it's gonna work. And you simply do a little tweak, and then all of a sudden it stops working. That's the thing about like just being able to use the surface itself instead of like using the screen, which is kind of stupid. Why they did this to this specific tool, which is the buggiest tool of them all. Now I can only find them if I face in a certain angle. Look at that. God dang it. It should be a cool tool, right? If someone actually put money to fix it. But even this stuff here I'm doing, it's removing some of the hair. It's not guaranteed that next time I open my, my Maya, they're gonna be perfectly in place, you know? Something might happen. It's kind of like a Kinder Bueno with a very bad surprise inside. Kinder eggs, sorry. Kinder eggs. Used to eat Kinder eggs as a kid. Sucky surprise. All right, let's get this.
Why didn't you make the hair thinner instead?
I'm sorry?
Why didn't you make the hair thinner?
The thinner? What part? Oh, you mean the mask?
Instead of using the density.
Yeah, I mean, like that's normally what I do, right? Like I make them disappear into like oblivion with a thickness, but you know, it's like I'm still trying to actually use this tool because I can see it's good. You know, it's like if it works, but I don't know, man. I'm stupid. I think that's the reason.
Or the desk is stupid, probably.
Yeah. I mean, like it kind of worked, right? But I mean, like it's risky, dude. Look at that. So now it's kind of working there. So let's just do what you said. I should listen to you, man. I'm doing stuff stupid here. I should listen to people more sane than me. So let's go to the thickness now. So basically, I'm gonna use the width tool, and I'm gonna go increments of like negative, like that. Minimum width of like 0.001, which can be very cool because you can get very tiny. Oh, now this is not gonna work, right? In this case, because you remember I added the noise at the very top for the scale. So that's why it's not gonna work. This is gonna fight it actually. So even though I have my modifier in there, I don't think this is gonna work because that's the top level. So the only way this is gonna work is if I go to this guy and I delete this guy. 0.005, 0.008, 0.007. Still very thick. Let's see, 6, something like that. So now if I try that, now I can actually shrink them to oblivion. But before I do that, let me just make them smaller so I can actually see where they are. Otherwise, it's going to be, you know, just making them disappear like Houdini, but without, you know. So let's try to make them smaller first. Let's get the size first. Minimum 0, 0, 0, and then increment smaller as well, like that. So let's just like shrink those guys first, so we can actually see them. If this is someone's grandma, they're gonna say like, my grandma doesn't have a nose hair like that. She's a nice lady. She cooks. She makes cake for us. Here. All those little guys, much smaller. Yeah, basically, like at this point, since they're like I put like the minimum amount of length you can get in there, it basically like I don't even need to make them thinner. I just like disappear with them. In that case, I could recover my my thickness variation that I had before. So yeah, that's pretty decent in there. And then now I can make some of them that is small, like thinner as well. So like that, right at the edge. Just blend them. And then, I mean, like if I need to, I can actually just like select a few of them and then make them thicker, just to add that little extra juice in there. And but in terms of like what we need for an old lady, we might have to maybe like pull some of them out and bend it, you know, do a little sculpting on them. But for the most part, I mean, like that's basically it. You know, it's like it's a little nose hair in there that should look nice from the renders. And then let's just do like, let's see from the side, from the close up. Let's do my noise here. Let's just increase a little bit more noise. So let's just get a little bit more random. Because like I said, sometimes if it's too straight, obvious, they're gonna see straight away. But if you do a little bit of it, right, you think it looks good in the renders, and then when it shades, it looks very straight still. So sometimes you have to go like double what you think is gonna be like the variation you need, and then it kind of ends up like rendering correct, you know. So that's what I noticed. But now that I did this, I can actually see some of those little guys poking through in there. So I'm just gonna shrink them into oblivion so they go away. There you go. So let's just add a little shader now. And the shader is gonna be, this is one solution I have to find out, like going from monitor to monitor in different resolutions can be very sucky because it kind of like, it's out of place. Even though sometimes I align the top of this with the middle of the next one, sometimes it's the bottom. And it doesn't matter what I do, I can never figure it out how to move stuff around. It jumps, you know, it's like you kind of like, oh, I think there's something, oh man. In my old machine, I had to do something which was, there is this auto adjustment for Windows in Windows 10, that there's an option there. I remember turning it off because like if you move from window to window, it pops, look at this, right? It self-adjusts it. But there's an option. I'm gonna figure it out tonight. Like, like tomorrow is gonna be a, you know, it's like we have only like 2 more classes. You know, just now gonna figure it out. But I totally forgot about that, man. There is a setting for sure that actually, you know, I can turn it off, and then that's gonna prevent all that crap. So let's see, standard hair. Let's name this guy here. Nose hair. Straightforward. And then let's select the nose hair in there, assign this guy. So now I have like black hair. God knows what color is gonna be, you know, the color of her nose hair, because like based on the eyebrows, they might have to be like very, very, you know, pale, but not like white. And definitely some salt and pepper right there. So we can try to add some of that. Let's see. Let's go bring the redness down. I can actually turn it off completely. And then I'm gonna crank the randomize. And I'm gonna bring, well, it's gonna have to be a combination again, right? Melanin and then the base. Let's try the melanin first, something around here. Let's bring this one down around here. Let's see how this renders. If it looks too sucky, and we do it again.
Time. Hello, sir.
Yes. Oh, that's going to be hard to see.
Time.
Sorry?
Time passes. Yeah, time passes so fast. 1 month is over.
Right.
I'm not even believing. Yeah.
It's crazy,
I thought,
man.
okay, one more week class.
It is crazy, man. Like how fast it is, you know. It's like, and it's always like, the thing is like when you have like a nice group of people, you know, it's like, which is like the majority of the times, you know, it's like, it's just like very great artists and also very nice people, you know. So it's like, it's always like this thing about like end of, you know, it's like school that you kind of like miss the people, you know. Yeah, it goes very fast, man. Indeed.
I was thinking, I have to tell sir that take more class.
Oh, one thing I forgot to, I mean, like I normally say this to the you know, to my former students, but if by any chance, like if you guys have any interest, for example, like buying any of the future classes, for example, like if I'm doing any future class and like, oh, it's a subject, for example, you're interested in, normally like the prices I charge, and they're $550 per class, right? Like if you buy just one offline. But for former students, I offer like a coupon. So it's basically like you pay $150. So like it's a $400 off. So if you have interest, because the content is basically like, it's very similar, right? It's kind of, most of the stuff is the same, but each character has a different set of challenges, right? Like for example, it can be the color of the skin or whatever it is. So if you have any class in the future, you think like, okay, I need to get this one as well. It's just like, let me know. Just I send you a coupon code, you know, it's like you can just use it.
So that is for live class or?
For what? For the individual classes.
Live. So you're saying offline courses or online?
Yeah, all the offline stuff. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the offline stuff. Yeah, because like my mind is like, you guys already supported me kind of like enough, you know. It's like by buying this, you know, it's like it's not cheap. And then if you want to get something that's like a similar content, you know, I just like, I'm not going to charge full price at all. I mean, like $150 for me, it's fine, you know. So you have access, like I said, like it's lifetime, you know, it's like you just get the stuff. But you see, like, it's just like, that's basically what we need in there, you know. It's like just a little bit of hair just to break that up. And probably like from the profile, I don't even know if you're going to be able to see that much. Let's see. I might have to actually reintroduce a little bit more density in there because I'm just not seeing that many. And but it might be because of this void, right? Like it's pretty dark in there. Let's just, man, I'm so afraid these days of like just tweaking something straight away, something that I would do in the past. Now I have to save every time before I do anything, which is better than losing everything, right? Like after last night, like losing like 3 hours of work, that was not fun at all. So I'd rather lose like 10 seconds to save something and then make sure that's good. So let's go to sculpt. Let's see, this guy here, right? No, actually this guy. Let's see if it's gonna break now. So I have my density mask at 0.7. Let's see what happens if I tweak it now. It might explode. Nothing happened. Okay, let's try again. 15. Oh, there you go. They're starting to pop in there. Okay. Yeah, seems like this one is safer than the multiplier. The multiplier would really destroy it, just like it happened before. And either that or the scale, right? The scale could do that as well. So let's see from the side like that. For example, from here, I'll make sure that that reads nicely in there. It looks like a lot, but I mean, like when you render, it might not be a lot. Let's see. There's only one way to realize what's going on. So in the next like 2 days, I mean, I normally reserve like 1 day for going over anything that was missing. For example, like if there's anything that was explained and it was just like made no sense, we can go over again. So like we can either do like tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. And then, so 1 day I normally do that. And the other day I take for, you know, it's like talking about post-processing. And then how I tweak stuff, for example, in Photoshop to give that extra little, you know, life to the character. You know, it's like also using that plugin, the alien skin that I use. And overall, like thinking about like the other technical stuff around it, you know, it's like maybe something I forgot to mention. And then, so one of those days, probably like tomorrow, I can talk about this more technical stuff, like the post-processing. And then normally, like if I have the time, I can actually go and do some sculpting, more sculpting, but basically it's going to be more of the same, right? Unless you guys request, for example, okay, can you go over like, I don't know, the secondary forms, how are you approaching them? I don't get it. What about the scale of the pores? I still don't get it. You know, it's like anything goes. So you guys think about it, and then we can go like in the course of like 2 hours and just go over like everything that's still missing in terms of like the pieces in the puzzle. You know, for example, like for Ryan, he was talking about like the length of the groom, how to make everything even, right? So it's kind of like that kind of stuff. You know, it's like we go over like a bunch of questions and we just like try to solve as many problems as possible in preparation for like this Saturday that we have like this marathon of reviews again, right, coming up. Yeah, so I want to make sure you guys have all the tools you need to go from here, you know, because like I said, myself, I cannot finish a piece like this within the time of the class. I go pretty far, right? Like I use the weekends and after the classes, like the time to do more work, but it's just like takes forever, right? Like if you start doing this stuff, like everything has to be detailed and yeah, it's just like a lot of time. This 40 hours we spend here, I probably put another close to 40 to be able to finish a job like this, you know? So yeah, let's make sure we get all your questions. You see, like the thickness could be a little thick, right? It can be a little thicker than this. It's not showing that much. I think it's missing some thickness right now. Let's try to add that. That's my life, man. Like it's like render, tweak, render, tweak, render, tweak. It never ends. It's I kind of like recognize that's a little bit you know, it's like in terms of the way that I approach certain things is not very conventional. For example, like if I'm being analyzed by by a groomer, you know, it's like they're gonna be like, oh my god, why are you doing this way, right? If it's like a TD guy, for example, like why are you approaching the skin this way? You know, it's like someone. It's just like I said, like I'm not a specialist in anything. I'm just like the combination of efforts make the image work at the end, you know. And that's basically my approach. You know, it's like I can tell you that in the past I've seen like many, you know, it's like of our students like creating some really cool work just by using similar techniques. But some of them I totally understand they decided to actually do it their own way, and it's totally fine. You know, as long as what you got from the class itself, you know, is like added to your tool set. You know, it's like different ways of approaching stuff, solving problems. You know, it's like that's basically what we do in the industry, right? Like you have like someone gives you a challenge, right? Like they come with this crazy project. How are you going to approach this, right? And then if you're young and have no experience with that stuff, you kind of like freak out from the get-go. But then over time you learn like, no, I did similar stuff before. So it all comes down to like problem solving skills, right? And then I think that's what comes down like to those classes. I mean, like I'm trying, like I'm having a problem like eliminating those hairs in there, and they was like, okay, how can I eliminate them without using the density brush? Okay, I can use a mask. No, but the mask is going to introduce this. Okay, I can shrink them, you know, right? Turn into a tiny little speck in there. You know, it's like there are many different ways of approaching stuff. You know, it's like I don't think like those are like smarter than the other ones. It's just like different, you know. Now, in terms of pipeline developed like for animation, gonna need like to have like those curves to be you know, it's like dynamic, right? And then the approach is going to be different. Like all those sculpting layers and all this stuff might behave differently once you have everything dynamic, right? So it's a different set of problems you're going to have if you're going to animate your character, right? If you don't have a perfect topology, you're probably going to hit a wall as well. It's like there are many shows we did in the past that it's like you start with the topology, it's tested, looks good, and then you're kind of like months into production, and then you find out that that topology has to be changed, right? For whatever reason, it's not you're not being able to accommodate all the facial expressions or anything, and then okay, let's redo this entire area of the sides of the eyes or whatever, or add more geometry inside of the mouth because we're going to need to open the mouth now because the director changed his mind, and then you have to redo stuff. So in the real world out there in the industry, it's just like it's kind of the same. It's like I like the format of those classes because I'm not like sugar coating things for you or editing everything out. Like all the stuff that doesn't work, I just edit out. It's like I want to make sure you guys see the type of problems you're gonna find out. It's like you're gonna use XGen, yeah, you're gonna get into trouble with stuff. Just to make sure that you have this idea about the, it's like in the real world things just crash. It's like it's a reality. So yeah. But you guys are not like kids. It's like most of you understand this stuff already. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, I am still little curious about the Kong sculpting. So it's like so amazing that I so many times I think that how much time you spend on it.
Yeah, so
because you said you did only sculpt.
Yeah, so I actually sculpted Kong, but for example, like the fine sculpting of the hands and feet was done by Martin, which is like an amazing texture artist, and he also a great sculptor. So he textured the hands, but the face and the rest of the body I did. And the first thing that the first meeting we had, they said we need to make sure that we have enough topology in the face. We need to have like a lot of topology because we don't want to rely on animated displacements. So we have to make sure that we have enough detail in there to be able to carve all the wrinkles and everything into the topology. I was like, okay, so let's say, let's talk to the technical guys and let's see how many polygons we need for the final model. And then it turns out that they are fine, like handling, let's say like 500,000 polygons base mesh, right? Like in the pipeline. Which is like nothing compared to the transformers we sculpted, like with millions and millions of polygons, and they were able to render everything. So, okay, so they gave me the pass, like, okay, 500,000 should be fine. So I focused on the 500,000. So when I planned the topology, I carved everything. It started with a very low res mesh, and doing that whole calculation, right? Okay, to get to 500,000 polys, how many times I have to subdivide to get that, right? Like the same way we approached it here. And then how many polygons I need for a super base mesh. So I basically like planned that super base mesh, and then I subdivided a couple of times, let's say like 3 times, and then to reach that 500,000. And by that time I had already the topology planned to have like half of all the resolution just in the head. So the head had like 250,000 polys just for the head. And this was like base topology, right? And then the rest of the body had the other like 250. But not like evenly distributed. Basically, like it was like hands had more topology, feet had more topology, face had a ton of topology, and then the rest of the body was just like, covered in hair, so that didn't have a lot of it, just enough to have like muscle simulation and everything underneath and everything. But yeah, it was like it takes planning to just like it depends on the type of approach. It's like sometimes the director, or not the director, but the visual effects supervisor can come and say, you know what? It's gonna be the opposite this time. You're gonna do like this as low poly as possible. We have this new pipeline that's gonna be all blend shapes mixed with displacement maps, all linked together, right? Which was kind of like similar to what we did with the Hulk. It's like blend shapes and as displacement maps, right? All dialed in together. So it all depends, man. Like you're gonna find like all kinds of problems and different visual supervisors, visual effects supervisors with different ideas about what should be done, And you just like, you're there, if you have experience, you just have to be able to deliver it. That's it.
Chris?
Yeah.
May I ask a stupid technical question again?
No, nothing is stupid, man.
On XGen group, like interactive group, can you, on a stack of a noise, only affect a portion of the hair? Like you can do in Core. In Core, you can make a function like stray and say, okay, on that, I want a noise that only affect a percentage, like 5%. So you have a really nice clump. You have a noise that really separate a few flyaway hair. Can you do that in?
That's a good question. I think like this is something that I would think more in terms of shader network. You know, how I can actually mix, for example, a noise modifier with a mask. So for example, like how to blend the noise modifier with the mask. If you multiply the two of them, you should potentially have like certain areas are going to be completely dark and not touched at all. And then just like in areas where the noise is picking through, like with the white modifier, right? Then you're going to be able to see the noise happening. So I think that's the way I would try to approach, you know.
Thank you. I will look at that.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's some other way to do it, but I mean, like, yeah, certain things that you have in the core is out like for years now, right? Like they have this implemented, and the interactive came out like just like a few versions of Maya ago, I think. And then it's still something that it should be evolving at this point. You know, it's like they have like probably like 3 versions with this already. But the thing is, like, since they're dismantling that team in there, I'm not sure what's gonna happen. You know, it's like if you're gonna get any more improvements to it. But yeah, man, it's like it's a shame. You know, it's like with all the potential that it has. Yeah, it's still thin. You know, I'm gonna be tweaking these guys and probably like tweaking some of yeah, get more thickness for sure. But you know, it's gonna be cool to just like see a little bit once you have this mix with the peach fuzz and all that stuff. It's gonna look cool. And all this little specky stuff that you see in here, it comes from 2 different places, right? So one of them, let's do a little test here, just so you see it, what I mean. So for example, you have like this little sparky stuff in there, which is really cool. That's what you expect to see in the skin, right? Like that's why we use that micro bump. That's to be able to break up the surface even further and really get this little sparky stuff in there. But it can be very deceiving when you're using like low samples in your render. So for example, let's just let's just like concentrate, focus in this area here. So let's just store snapshot. And let's increase our samples in here. Actually, I already have enough samples. It's just that I'm using the progressive render. But let's crank this one to maybe 12. Right here, and then turn this off. Let's render again just that little area. And what happens sometimes, my point here is that sometimes you think you're getting the effect you want because you see like those little sparky stuff, like the little white dots, as you should see, right? But then sometimes it's due to the lower samples, and it gives you this false impression that things are breaking up more than they are because it's just noise, right? So let's do a render, an actual render, with more samples in here, just to double check that, you know, to see if that's true. From time to time, it's important for you guys to pick like one specific area, especially areas with high specular, and do a full-on render. You know, it's like it doesn't need to be 12 samples, maybe like 10. And you see that I'm also cranking the specular to 4 and this subsurface to 4, because I want to make sure that the result is absolutely smooth. You know, I want to make sure that everything it has as many samples as possible. So let's see the difference between this and the other one we had before. That looks really nice. I can tell that even with high samples, those guys are breaking up pretty nicely right there. But look at the difference between those two, right? There is this impression that there's more stuff happening than they are. You know, it's like things are a little bit more sharp. So for example, like sometimes you render something and it looks like especially from a distance. This one is a close-up, so it's not the best example. But from a distance, sometimes you get like almost like a diffuse look to the specular because it's breaking up a lot because of the noise of the render. But then as soon as you turn on like the high resolution stuff, all of a sudden everything looks very plastic and filmy, you know, look, especially from a distance. But in this case here, I like the way it's breaking up. You know, it's like the little tiny little dots in there. So by the way, I can tell you guys, like I did some tweaking there. I don't know if I passed it. I think I did when I updated you guys on the shader stuff, but just to make sure that we get that value in there. For the bump, what I'm using is basically, let's see, this guy. Okay, so if I look at this bump, so my settings in here, I tweaked them. So, but I'm pretty sure I passed this to you guys. The eye cell noise one. Those are the settings I'm using. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I passed this one. 3, 1.5, 1, and 30. 30 is basically like the size of them. For the real world scale that I have in here, I think that was enough to actually break up. You see, like I still can see the pores perfectly right there, but I have like this extra level of breakup in between. That's what we want to see. And I was like, it's just like, make sure you break that look of, plastic of the, the skin. And then the other thing you have to make sure is that when you mix it with your bump height map, that you have like the intensity to look very correct. In my case here, because my map was painted in a certain way, my color balance looks like this. I had to actually bring it down, the exposure quite a lot. And even the alpha gain, I had to bring from 1 to 0.15. But that's because when I was doing my tests, I had like a simple shader. It's just like I created a brand new shader, just like a dark gray shader with a lot of specular. And I assigned just this, this mapping here as a bump. And then I was tweaking, seeing this big, for example, until I found like that correct, like sweet spot between, it's like the skin in different areas. For example, I turned off all the, I didn't have a displacement map on or anything. So I basically like I turned visibility between the nose and then the lips, because the lips can go, don't have a lot of this bump applied to it. So I want to see the difference between them and the lips. So tweaking both of them, just seeing like a, a simple shader, I was able to actually find out what was missing in there. And then once I had these tweaks, I just like plugged this map and this all those settings back to the shader network, and then that worked from that point on. So yeah. All right, guys, I talk to you tomorrow, and I hope you guys have a nice one. Stay safe out there, and then let's get those questions piling up, and then we try to solve as many as possible.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Nice.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Right.